The demonic Vashtor the Archifane is a demigod of his kind and possessed of the ability to reshape reality through cunning and force. Hello there! In this video we'll be showing you how to paint Vashtor the Archifane. We'll show you how to paint Vashtor efficiently to get him looking great and on the gaming board in no time at all. The undercoat we've used is Runelord Brass. We will also tidy up any areas that we need to with Runelord Brass from the pot. The paints are on the screen now. Remember that these are our recommendations. Feel free to paint your miniatures however you like. Ready your diabolical anvil and bring your demonic hammer to the forge. It's time to paint Vashtor. If you are new to painting or want to know the paints and techniques used in this video, check out our Citadel Color Painting Essentials videos in the description. The first paint that we're going to use is Grey Sear, and we're going to apply this on the skin and any skulls that we find on the miniature. Remember to use multiple thin coats to build up the coverage. Try and be as neat as possible near other details, as this will save time later on. This stage will take a while, but it's worth it to build up good coverage over the skin. Remember not to continuously paint the same area. Move on to other bits and let it dry. This will stop the skin from building up any texture. Once the paint is completely dry, come back and do a second coat. And there we go, all the skin details have been picked out. It's time to move on to the metallics. For our first metallic, we will use Iron Warriors, and we're using this to pick out all of the silver metallic details. If you get lost where these are, just remember to check the box art. Again, try and be as neat as possible to save time with tidying up. However, if you make any mistakes, don't worry, you can always just fix it using the previous layers. Iron Warriors is a deep dark silver that will contrast the rest of the metallics very nicely. For our next metallic paint, we'll use Balthazar Gold, and we're using this to pick out all of the trim. Using Balthazar Gold to pick out the trim details will add a really nice two-tone effect that we can see on the box art. Take your time and try and be as neat as possible when picking out the trim. However, if you get any of the Balthazar Gold onto the Runelord Brass areas, just remember you can tidy that back up with Runelord Brass from the pot. Once you're finished with Balthazar Gold, just remember to change the water in your water pot, as you don't want to get any metallic flakes into the rest of your paints. And with that stage complete, all of the trim details with Balthazar Gold have been picked out and look great on the model. For our next paint, we'll be using Corvus Black, and we'll use this to pick out the hooves, horns, talons, as well as any cables that we can find on the miniature. Corvus Black is an off black that will allow you to add depth to it later on. Just make your way around the miniature picking out the black details that you need to. If you get lost where these are, just remember to check the box art. As always, just use multiple thin coats to build up a nice consistent coverage. We're now going to focus on painting the rock, and for this we're going to use Mechanicus Standard Grey. Just be careful painting around the previously painted areas with this stage. Do a couple of thin layers for good coverage. And there we go, all of the base paints have been applied. Now it's time to add more detail to the miniature. We will now use Druchii Violet, and we're going to use this to pick out the skin. When doing this, apply straight from the pot. Don't let it pool anywhere, as this will obscure details. When dry, if you need to, do another coat over areas where you think you may need more. A good tip here is to apply it straight into the recesses as well, as this will help to add some natural depth. And there we go, with that stage complete, the skin details are now completely finished. Druchii Violet has acted great over Grey Sear undercoat. We're now going to use Nuln Oil and apply that over the silver metallics as well as into the deepest recesses of the skin. We're then going to apply that over the cable and the rock. As in the previous stage, just be careful not to let Nuln Oil pool anywhere, as this will obscure details. If you want to as well, you can always do a second layer of Nuln Oil over the silver metallics. And there we are, with the silver metallic shaded and the deepest recesses of the skin darkened even more. It's time to move on to the next shade paint. It's time to move on to our next shade paint, and for this we're going to use Agrax Earthshade. We're going to apply this over the brass and gold details as well as the skulls that are on the base. We're going to use Agrax Earthshade in 2 stages here. The first stage will be to apply it straight from the pot over the dark gold details. We're then going to thin down Agrax Earthshade with water. You're looking for a 3:1 consistency of water to Agrax Earthshade, and then applying it over the brass gold details. When doing this, you're looking to pull it into the recesses. Once the first layer of this is dry, come back and do a second layer just into the deepest recesses of the brass. Don't forget to pick out the skulls as well. And with that stage complete, the metallics are now fully shaded. It's time to add a bit more color to the model. For our 9th paint, we'll be using corn red, and we're going to apply this over the red details around the model. We're going to use corn red to act as the raging hellfire that we see around the model. So what we need to do is thin out corn red with a 4:1 ratio of water to corn red. What you then need to do is just look at the box art to find all the areas where you want to apply this color. So we're looking to pick out the face, the hammer, and the furnaces that are on his back. We also want to apply it into the gun that's in his left hand. When picking out these areas, just remember to let it dry before coming back and adding a bit more if you need a little bit more coverage. A good little tip here as well is to not just put it within the areas where we want the hellfire to be, but actually to drag the paint a little bit over the edges, because this will help to do a heat bloom effect. And there we are. With the corn red applied, our hellfire is taking shape. For our 10th paint, we will use Ironbreaker, and we're going to use this as a dry brush highlight over all of the metallic details. When dry brushing, just be careful not to get it onto the skin. However, if you do, you can always just tidy up by using Grey Sear and then reapplying Druchii Violet. Remember to take your time when doing this stage, as it's worth it to be neat here. And with all of the metallics picked out using Ironbreaker, we've now completely painted Vashtor in just 10 paints. This is a really good place to stop if you'd like to. All you'll need to do now is paint the base, and for this you can go check out our technical paints video on how to paint bases. What we're going to do now though is carry on, and if you're feeling up to it, we're now going to do a couple of more stages just to lift Vashtor to the next level. For our next paint, we're going to use Dawnstone, and we're going to use this to highlight the blacks on the miniature as well as the rock. For the blacks, we'll be highlighting the hooves, the cable, as well as the talons. We're going to highlight the frayed areas of the cable, just using the side of the brush picking out those areas. We're also going to edge highlight the hooves, and when doing this, just gently run the edge of the brush over the tops of the hooves and then drag them down to show where they've been scratched. We're now going to use a dry brush in order to highlight the rock. When dry brushing, try and get as much of the paint off as you can and work the paint into the bristles. Just take a little bit of care when going around the previously painted details. If you want to learn more about dry brushing, you can always go check out the Citadel Paints video on dry brushing. And there we go, with the cables picked out and the rocks highlighted, we now need to move on to highlighting the reds. We are now going to thin down Evil Sun's Scarlet with a roughly 4:1 ratio with water and apply it within the areas where we painted corn red. We're looking to paint 3/4 of the way down with any areas that we see that are vents. This will help to collect the pigment towards the bottom section as well as establish a red heat glow from the lower areas. As always when doing this, if you want to do a second coat, just let the first one dry completely first, and then come back and paint the Evil Sun Scarlet into the lower areas. Try and keep Evil Sun Scarlet within the areas where you want the heat bloom to be, leaving corn red towards the top and on the outside of the edges. This will help to show it being hotter towards the middle and inside of all the details. And with that stage complete, our hellfire glow is really starting to come along. What we need to do now is just push it to the next level just a bit more. And for our next paint, we'll be using Fire Dragon Bright. And we're going to paint this in the most inner areas of all of our details where the hellfire glow is. We're looking to thin this down with a 3:1 ratio with water. This is because Fire Dragon Bright is already quite thin. Once you're happy with the consistency of your paint, all you need to do then is paint it towards the lowest areas of the Hellfire. If you found that you've applied just a bit too much, dry off your brush completely and then just soak up the excess with the dry bristles. You can then reapply this towards the lower areas. And there we go. With that stage complete, our Hellfire glow is now completely finished. There we are. Vashtor the Archifane is complete. We hope you have learned some new techniques and seen how you can break down even the biggest, most detailed models into easy painting solutions for getting maximum effect with just a few paints. You can see that our model is based in Astrogranite, but you can base it in any color you like. Again, if you want to learn more about basing, check out our technical paints video on how to base your models. Well, we hope you've enjoyed the video and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye!